The purpose of tonight's Rise Mzansi Citizens Assembly is to talk about why it is that we are a country that suffers from hunger when we have enough food. You are the people. Ours is a participatory democracy, which means that policies are made on the will of the people and on the ideas of the people. And that's why we call this a citizens' engagement. 20 million people in our country are on what is called a spectrum of hunger. There are 10,000 children a year who die of diseases and illnesses that are related to not having enough food. 30% of our children are stunted by the age of 5 because they don't have enough food. I'm going to start just by asking Irfan to introduce the Rise Mzansi thematic paper, the ideas that Rise Mzansi is developing and is planning to take into government.
It's a painful discussion for me because growing up, I was sheltered from the privilege of my family working and building a small business to put food on the table for us as myself and my siblings and my grandparents. One thing I didn't know is that my parents often would not eat to make sure that my siblings and I actually had food on the table. Rise has produced a paper called Rising Up Against Hunger. On the front page of this, it speaks about ending hunger and ensuring that we have access to sufficient food and reforming the food system that exists in this country. 1 in 4 South Africans are affected by food hunger. Some of us in this room are part of that number. We often don't realize that this comes with social connotations of shame, of indignity, and this is a problem that is not addressed by the leaders today. In this paper, there are 4 key pillars. The first says, we will end immediate violence of hunger, especially among children, pregnant women, and the poor and marginalized people of this country. New legislation will be introduced so that all unselected, unused, unsold food of good quality that we can still redistribute to community centers and to people who deserve to eat. Social security is necessary for us to actually alleviate people out of poverty and inequality. But the social child grant specifically needs to move beyond the poverty line of 680 Rand. And over the next 2 years, it needs to increase to 1,335 Rand. The next is a maternal support grant. Too often we've seen the burden placed on mothers, single mothers. The National School Nutrition Program is a very powerful tool to combat this hunger crisis. But unfortunately, this system is not sustainable. And we need to expand it so that children have access to food 365 days a year. Additionally, we want to add and support direct investment into community gardens. So how do we expand the land use to sufficiently capacitate our own farmers, locally trained farmers, to also benefit and produce goods and food to feed our nation? The second point on our pillar speaks about ensuring everyone eats. As a government, you can legislate and regulate the fact that certain increases shouldn't happen. Certain items shouldn't be charged for tax. And that means holding accountable those corporates who also have to play a big role in shifting the way this highly profit-driven approach exists in our society. The sugar tax needs to be increased. And I know we like sugar. Yeah. Many of us in this room like our cold drinks. This is an addictive substance, but it's also a damaging substance. So we need to accelerate in our school system, but also public education. Like today, we're sitting in a room learning about this topic. In areas in rural South Africa, where people actually have some land to grow food, they can't grow food anymore. You can see in the Northern Cape, it's becoming hotter and hotter. And this climate impact on food systems, not just in South Africa, but the SADC region. we need to make sure we work with civil society, work with our local leaders, so that we can actually ensure that every single household, when they go to bed, there's food on the table.
We're hungry in this country not because we're a country that doesn't produce enough food. In fact, we are a country that throws away about 1/3, I think, of our food.
1 in 2 people in this room, at the current rate we're going, is going to die of something called non-communicable diseases. Because in this country, we've seen it go up with 60% in the last year. Why? Because our foods have changed. We're not eating traditional diets anymore. We're eating things coming from packs. So we're having this strange thing in this country where 20 million people are hungry, but 7 out of 10 women are overweight or obese. 3 in 10 men. Our kids have double the rate of overweight and obesity than the rest of the world. These two things are not separate. If you're hungry, you're eating things that make you full. You're eating what we call ultra-processed food, things that come from a pack. And we are seeing a very interesting thing happen, where these big corporations, and I'm telling you now, they're basically all in Switzerland and the US, are coming in and they've said, you know what, we're getting in trouble at home. We need to start feeding our poison to people in other countries. It has now emerged that Nestle doesn't add sugar to their baby foods in Switzerland, Germany, and the United Kingdom, but they do add it to baby foods in South Africa. There's a reason we don't add sugar to babies' diets, okay? It's terrible for children. When Nestle was asked, why don't you do this in Germany, UK, and Switzerland, they said, you know, we just follow local laws. So my question is, why do we not have laws that protect us from trash being put in our food? We need to start holding these corporations accountable. We need things, so I'm very happy to hear that one of the things that Rise Mzansi wants to do is to tax sugar. Sugar causes diabetes. Something I would like to see in your food program is to be more specific about the National Schools Nutrition Program. We need school breakfasts as well. We need a universal basic income. And that is something that everyone in this country should be interested in, because if people are hungry, people are desperate, that is when we see crime.
Good evening. My name is Lusedi Makatana from Orange Farm. I am 21 years old and I work in a garden. Our garden is called... our garden is called Botle Hub. Since I was raised by my grandmother, so I didn't have parents because both my parents died. Some women around the township, they are starting a gardening project. Around, volunteer. So at first we didn't want to go there because I was young. I was like, gardening. I don't know anything about farming. I know nothing about growing spinach or anything. So okay, so okay, they taught us grow spinach. I was taught how I should water. I was taught how I should plant those things. Okay, so it started in 2022. It was very cold, but we were going there each and every morning from 8 o'clock till 4 o'clock. So Hanseria, we started planting crops. That time we don't have any sponsor. We are just going there without getting paid, but we are still going there. We are still being patient, going there each and every day, waking up, grow the crops more. We made it a point where each and every week, once a week, like spinach, like potatoes, we have, if we have them, like body tomatoes, we had the green peppers, we have brinjals, we had a lot of things. Like each and every week, then we go and donate. That time we are not even working, but we are trying to help out where we can. So we just continued like that, sponsor. And early this year, we were successful. We registered Gardinerona. We registered our cooperative. Then right now, we are still looking for our sponsors. We are still checking out for sponsors, taking our documents. But our challenge is, right now, we are failing to get a lease where we are planting those crops, because we've been going to Bramfontein and back, but even now, we still don't have the lease. Another thing, in our garden, generally a lot of youth. And I think we have 6 of them who were drug addicts. But they came after going to rehab, even now. Yeah, so now the only thing that we are struggling with is that, like, sometimes we run out of seedlings. You'll find that we have a shortage of maybe spinach or maybe tomatoes sometimes. So it is difficult sometimes for us to always contribute, because some of us do not have that money. So even in our garden, since we have youth, I think we have 5 of them who have matric. So some of them have always been wanting to go to school, but we have no funding to go to school, because the institutions that we are getting, they are private institutions, so we have no bursaries to go there. So that's the biggest challenges.
So thank you very much for the opportunity. So quickly off, Lesedi, I'm totally inspired. I know the community. See me after the show. I've got access to some seeds. So how amazing that Lesedi, also while struggling in their community, donates the food to the others who are more needy. Now, why I want to stress that is because that's the example that we should all follow. So I want to start by saying that hunger is a national disgrace. I grew up in Lens, in the poorest area in Lens called Extension 2. We were constantly hungry. There's enough food for everyone in South Africa. It's just in the wrong places. The food is not the problem. The scarcity is not a problem. The system is the problem. There are various reasons for hunger, but mostly hunger is a factor of poor leadership. I have great respect and hold out much hope that there's so much potential in Rise, in Mzansi, in dealing with this urgent and pressing challenge. Poverty is the cause of hunger. In South Africa, it's a systemic problem. Unemployment is a big problem, particularly among the youth. For the age group 18 to 34, the unemployment rate is above 50%. And we are the most unequal society on the planet. No wonder people are hungry. Here I want to emphasize this idea of the right words for the right problems. So we don't talk about food waste, right? We talk about unused food. Because how can you refer to something as waste and you expect the poor and the vulnerable to eat it? Well, obviously, we talk about climate change, right? So climate change will exacerbate every food problem that we have. The policy is important. The long-term vision is important, but we need to do some simple things right now. Implementing and expanding food assistance programs such as food banks, soup kitchens, and school feeding schemes to provide immediate relief to those in need. Now, of course, the food that the kids get at school is vitally important, but the budget and the tenders are the problem. Rise will say, and other people will tell you, it's going to be the child income grant or whatever. We just need it to the most vulnerable right now. We need money in the pocket today. Nutrition programs, implementing nutrition programs that focus on providing essential nutrients to the most vulnerable. And we have a list of who they are. Pregnant women, infants, and young people to prevent malnutrition and stunting. Community food gardens are absolutely essential. I cannot understand why there isn't a community food garden in every public school in this country. I have a food garden on my pavement. Collaboration with NGOs or public awareness programs to talk about this problem more openly, and this forum is commendable for that, to openly talk about it. So Irfan said he was hungry, and if he was fed, it means his parents were hungry. My parents gave up their meals so that we could eat. Personally, out of my own efforts, I donate 1 ton of food a month. 1 ton of food a month. And half of that goes to the people's pantry. Obviously, I have identified the problem. What are the benefits if Rise Mzansi's policy is implemented? It's very, very simple. Improved health, enhanced productivity, better educational outcomes, reduced poverty, social stability, improved quality of life for all of us, and healthcare savings costs. Amandla!
I've seen Sunny's pavement food garden. I've also seen this organization that Sunny talks about called People's Pantry. What I can tell you, which Sunny doesn't know today, is that People's Pantry is in danger of closing today because they can't afford 5,000 Rand a month for the warehouse space that they use to store food. It's over to you now, and I'm sure many of you have questions.
People living with HIV, ne? It's for us, Rise Mzansi, that how are we going to stop that? Because I've realized that many people, they stop their treatment because of lack of food.
I think you're absolutely right. It's a big problem that many people with HIV who are taking antiretroviral medicines are struggling to take those medicines because they don't have food. So we can see that this food issue is connected with good health.
It's for you. I also said, thank you. You are doing a great job. So can't you expand it bigger? Orange Farm is big. Orange Farm we would really like to do it with you.
So right now in Orange Farm, in there by Tamsanga Secondary School, we have started another garden there, and we already started another garden in Straightford Primary School, and we're still planning to go to many schools like Refaleti Primary School there by Extension 9, and we want to go to Extension 2, so we are still going to the principals.
Last week we celebrated 1 year, and instead of us going to a stadium, we deliberately said we're going to make sure we support community kitchens. And in just this one weekend, we were able to impact over 100 communities.
How are we going to fight hunger? But I'm coming from the perspective of traditional healers.
There's a whole community of healers within Rise Mzansi. We can connect you afterwards with them because I think it's part of this discussion.
Rise Mzansi has a beautiful idea on really trying to increase the social grant for single mothers. How will Rise Mzansi monitor that the money is really used for children?
There will always be anecdotes about, people. There will always be like one or two examples of this person took their grant money and they did this, this, and this. I can tell you now, during the start of COVID-19, we worked with food parcels, and the experiences that I've had speaking to single moms are giving all their food away. It's literally a term in social science called sheltering.
On the 12th of April, President Ramaphosa came to find out and make empty promises again. What Rise can do.
This suggestion is for us all here. You remember Ubuntu. Hunger, we can fight it with Ubuntu.
Ubuntu in policy form is a universal basic income, because that's exactly what it is. We say we're pulling all of our money in the form of tax, and we're going to give money back to each and every person.
I hosted 4 of my own kitchens or supported kitchens on Sunday. Some of you are here. That came from me as a leader, not from Rise, because Rise doesn't have that money. So when we say it's somebody else's problem, we don't take responsibility ourselves and say, what can I do? That's when Ubuntu becomes real. Not from a point of compliance and counterfeit goods, we need a regulatory body that can do this work efficiently and effectively. There's an idea of a national food security and nutrition council that still doesn't exist. We need to implement that.
So I'm not part of Rise, right? I will happily be voting for Rise. But that's not the good news. So Mark said that the People's Pantry is facing an existential crisis. Some of you may have seen that I was on my cell phone. I made an appeal to 3 people, and 2 have responded positively to say they will cover the costs. We don't know this, but one of the accountants or the bookkeeper for the People's Pantry is that gentleman over there. And Mark, there's the proof of payment. That I just wanted to demonstrate the power of our community.
Rise is not a movement of us, of me. For too long, we feel powerless as people, as ordinary citizens, that we don't have the ability to do something. Look at this room around you. There are over 100 of us listening today, engaging today, because we all want a different South Africa. We spoke of food scarcity. There's no such thing. And Uncle Sunny was saying we shouldn't call it food waste. Unused food that gets just thrown away. There's no scarcity. The problem is we've not allocated and developed systems that can take that food to put it on the plates of families who need it. Rise exists because the dysfunction has forced many of us who never thought we could be politicians, that we want to get into the ring and fight because we know that we deserve better. And so the last point I want to make is we barely make big promises. You won't find us going to say everyone is going to have jobs tomorrow. We do basic work to ensure that everyone has their dignity upheld. We work with communities, for communities, and by communities, because that's what democracy means. I can do one commitment to you, and that commitment is when I get elected to the Gauteng legislature, every 3 months, I'll be hosting a citizens' assembly in every single one of our communities. And what that's going to do is make you and me and everyone here hold ourselves accountable.
The election takes place in 1 month and 2 days. That's still enough time to go into our communities, to get people who are saying, I don't want to vote, I'm sick of voting, nothing changes, and so on, and say to them that Rise Mzansi will bring change. Rise Mzansi will make sure that there are people in Parliament fighting for food.